Yeah, and yeah, jeez.
And that, as much as anything else, led to my drinking problem.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Paul Workman, and I am the man of constant hatred.
I'm Manny Classic, and this is Drinking Age Movies, a review show where we review movies from 21 years ago.
And this week we say happy 21st birthday to a film that was based off of a show that was based off of another show. That's right, we're watching Turbo, a Power Rangers movie.
It's time to power up. The world's most famous action force is back on the big screen. With a secret weapon.
I'm the new Blue Ranger.
What are you talking about?
A giant problem. And a whole new way.
Wind Chaser ready to howl.
Turbo was released March 28th, 1997, directed by David #winning and Shuki Levy. It was written by Shel Danielson and Shuki Levy, based on characters by Shuki Levy and Haim Saban. It stars all of your favorite Power Rangers if your favorite Power Rangers came from Season 3 of the show. Jason David Frank, Catherine Sutherland, Nakia Burris, it introduces Blake Foster, Johnny Young Bosch, and a bunch of other characters. You get some cameos from some of your previous favorite Rangers on a budget of $8 million. Its opening weekend was 3.3 here in the U.S., and it only grossed 8.1 here in the U.S.
So it kind of broke even-ish?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. When a new threat faces the Power Rangers, they gain new forms and new powers in order to fight it. That's pretty much the plot in a nutshell, because we'll get to that.
Mm-hmm.
Alright, let's talk Impact, 21 years later.
So, this individual season of Power Rangers doesn't go on for a horribly long time. I think it gets, 1 or 2 seasons. I don't exactly remember. But a few of the characters continue on for a few more seasons. With that being said, Power Rangers is still running to this day.
Right.
So as a television show, we're moving further and further along. We've even gotten to the point where all of the Power Ranger stories actively tie together.
Right.
With the introduction of stuff like the Morphing Grid, which is explained later on. And at the time of this recording, Haim Saban just signed a contract with Nickelodeon to keep extending this for another 3 years.
Right.
On top of that, we got the 2017 Power Rangers movie. So culturally, it's still, I guess, relevant to children in the same way that it was maybe not at this point. I feel like this point was kind of a low point, and they were just cashing in on the first Power Rangers movie.
Yeah.
But it's still a thing. Children are apparently still watching in droves, and
My 4-year-old loves Power Rangers. He especially likes the Dino stuff later on. I don't know that he's ever seen this particular iteration. I know he hasn't seen this movie, at least at the time of this recording. That could change.
he likes cars, so it might be a solid choice.
He likes cars and he likes Power Rangers. And he likes things that transform, too. That's like his favorite thing, is things that transform.
That's right.
I don't see this film itself having too much impact. Like I said, it feels more of like a cash-in. The first film was real successful. The show is still pretty strong at this point when it comes out. But I feel the actual impact is they don't make another Power Rangers film based
20 years?
for 20 years. Well, I was going to say particularly based off the show.
Yeah.
Because the first movie is a tie-in to the show. This is a tie-in to the show. They actually change things inside the show. The new Power Rangers movie isn't the characters or the characters from the first season, but it's not a tie-in to the still running series.
Yeah, if anything, I feel the 2017 kind of Power Rangers movie reboot actually garnered a lot of interest, but from the Adi Shankar short film Power/Rangers, which is almost like the Chris Nolan treatment of Batman, where you get a little bit harder edged short story to this.
Right.
And that's really great if you're trying to watch that. Go ahead and do yourself a
It has
favor.
Katie Sackhoff's in it. James Vanderbeek's in it. There's a few other names in it that I'm not remembering off the top of my head because I haven't watched it in a while, but it is really good.
Mm-hmm.
How did we like this movie?
So realistically, I remember liking it as a kid. I was one of those dudes that was still real big into anime and cartoons at the age of 13 when this came out.
Yeah, me too.
So it was. I don't even remember it being great as a kid. I just remember it being enjoyable.
Mm-hmm.
Watching it now, less so.
Yeah.
It was a film, and it took up 94 minutes of my time, is how I remember it as of right now when I just finished watching it. Realistically, I feel like inherently a lot of the problems with Power Rangers as a movie is they just take the premise of one episode and stretch it to however long that movie's going to end up being, and you don't need the rest of the film, honestly.
And legitimately, the premises to the episodes, the whole Monster of the Week thing, is pretty thin to begin with. So once you try to take something that's thin at 22 minutes, and make it 90 minutes, you're not going to have... It's probably not going to be a good time.
Now, you can't say that, though, because me and you both have a love of big monster beat-em-up films.
That's also
and those
true.
are at least enjoyable. This one tries to create a story as to why the guys that we know to be the good guys have to facilitate the fight with what we know to be the bad guys, as opposed to just like, hey man, here's a big robot, here's a big monster, they gonna duke it out.
Yeah, I mean, as I say, I feel just the Monster of the Week premise of this show is a little thin. I mean, you can have fun, learn your whatever morality lesson you're supposed to learn at the end of 22 minutes, and move on. But when essentially you don't do that, because the 2017 film takes this premise and fleshes it out. This film just takes the premise and stretches it out. It doesn't give the characters any added emotional depth. It doesn't find any more good reasons for the villains to exist. They're just very bland, basic villains, which in a 22-minute clip going through episode after episode, yeah, sure, let's take over the world, continuously trying. But for 90 minutes to not have a fleshed out reason for them to exist just feels weird.
Yeah, and I think the film realizes this, because it does some things to bring back cameos from old Power Rangers, hoping that you'll care about them, or old villains. You get a scene where you end up calling the first two villains from the series Rita Repulsa and Lord Zed.
Right.
And the nuts thing is that in this span of this movie, between the first movie and the first season of the show to this one, there's maybe 5 villains in between. Because you have this, you have...
Ivan Ooze.
Yeah, you have Ivan Ooze from the first movie.
Mm-hmm.
You have... And I don't even remember what his name was, but him and his wife were the king and queen of the Mecha Kingdom that came down and stuff like that. So it's just a thing that exists to where you could have called in more characters if you were just going to go this route. But overall, since they only kind of pick and choose 1 or 2 from each side, it just seems lazy.
Yeah. I mean, you get certain examples like Walter Emmanuel Jones, who's become a SAG actor at this point, wasn't allowed to do this film because it's non-union. So he just kind of skips out on it. But is Thai Trang still alive at this point?
Yes, she is. She chose not to be in this film.
Because she did not like the way she was treated ever.
And the same thing happens with David Yost, who played Billy. Shortly before this movie takes place, he ends up quitting the show and refuses to do the movie because of his treatment on set, because he is it has come out now that he is a gay gentleman, and apparently there was a lot of bullying and hazing just for his sexual orientation, which at its core is deeply and philosophically wrong, especially on a children's TV show that promotes equality and fighting together as a team to overcome obstacles.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, it's this whole, what message are we really sending? You see it a lot in things like this, where companies are outright saying, treat everyone the same and fight evil, and they don't, and they are.
I feel this movie, more so than anything else, provides what'll be a demographic lull for Power Rangers, because for about a solid 10 years or so, no one really pays attention to the fact that Power Rangers exist after this. Profits are down, sales are down for toys and things like that, and honestly, you can't say that it's the show itself, because the show just rinses and repeats the same things. The monsters look different and the cast looks different, but at its core, it's just a monster of the week each week with some kind of overarching backstory that, hey, this is a thing and this is why these costumes look like this. So
yeah. That kind of goes to a little bit of the fact where Disney and Nickelodeon for years have done such short runs on series because they feel their original base is going to grow out of them. So they go in, they create the series, they let it run for about 3 to 4 years, and then they just cancel it because they don't think their original audience is going to want to watch it. So normally if something comes about, like Rugrats becomes this huge success. And so they continue that on for quite a few years, and then they do a couple spin-off series of it. And like All Grown Up is successful. They make 2 movies off of it. So when they're able to continue to capitalize on it, it makes sense. So it's interesting that this show continues to run to this day when it had such a lull after.
Well, you gotta think. Originally, this isn't a Disney or Nickelodeon thing.
Correct.
Shung Levy's Haim Saban is producing this, and they're pitching the idea. Originally, Fox purchases it, and I think this is where this run is still at the time. Is that Fox is still...
Yeah, because this was a 20th Century Fox film.
So that's still a thing. Also, realistically, they have an unlimited material source because, like you said at the beginning, it's a show within a show. So the Go Rangu Sentai series that this is actually based on is still running in Japan and has been quite popular for even prior to us getting it here in the United States as Power Rangers. If I remember correctly, it's been running since somewhere in the early 80s or so in some form or another. And there's going to be a clip playing right now because I'm going to find this clip and it's going to be in this video. But a couple years ago, there was a commercial in Japan for running shoes.
Okay.
And this dude has this pair of running shoes, and like one of the rangers appears on this side street.
Okay.
And he starts getting chased by this ranger, and eventually he pretty much hits the center square where every ranger that's ever been in Go Rangu Sentai is surrounding him, and he throws the shoes on, and then he becomes a ranger.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, it's really sick because there's like 500 of these different rangers chasing him throughout the streets by the end of this commercial.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
I'm excited to watch that.
Yeah, it's actually a very charming commercial for something that runs like 30 seconds. But yeah, the show has theoretical infinite source material because every time in Go Rangu Sentai that new powers are introduced or a new cast, you just label it something different here in the United States. Throw on a generic backstory, have your actors go in. Which is why in the very first series, the Yellow Ranger doesn't have a skirt because in the Japanese version, the Yellow Ranger's a guy.
Yeah, very visibly a guy.
Mm-hmm.
Very visibly.
So.
Yeah, so this movie is a mess. It is all over the place. There's so many thoughts and ideas that were thrown in that almost felt like they were creating it as they went along, which they probably were. I don't have any proof they weren't, but if someone can get that for me, please get that for me, because it's 1 second, hey, these two are like climbing in the mountains and they come across something. All right, now let's give them cars, and these cars need to go on a Spanish galleon, and now the Spanish galleon's going to explode. And they're going to end up in a volcano, and what the hell is going on?
This is all predicated on the fact that they need to save what can only be described as the love child of Willow and Barf from Spaceballs,
or essentially just a worse version of Gwildar from Masters of the Universe, the movie.
The worst version of Gwildar. And his wife and child, who are just there as well.
And they just appear out of nowhere. They don't mention them at all, then suddenly they're kidnapped.
Yeah, they're kidnapped, and they have Juggernaut's helmets which prevent their psychic rays from reaching other Gwildars.
Just what?
There's a couple kind of history things in this movie. If you're a fan of Power Rangers, last time the Zeo powers are used, which is roughly half a second. Catherine's falling from a cliff, and she's like, Zeo Ranger 5, pink! But she never actually turns to a Zeo Ranger. She just becomes a pink beam of light before she crashes into the water, the base of the waterfall. She didn't do anything for her because she still cuts her leg open.
Yeah.
So...
And then Bad Wildar has to heal it for her.
Using his stick of truth.
Yeah. The word stick of truth is uttered in this film, if you can believe that. I can't.
So it's a thing. One point there's a scene where whatever his name is, whatever his actual name is,
We'll just keep calling
Larigo. Larigo's the character's actual name. Larigo can't be in the sun, but of course he's in the middle of a jungle because that provides tension. And luckily for us, much like this movie, he's saved by a group of chimpanzees. These are the same chimpanzees that typed out the script. So...
Yeah. And then Shuki Levy, co-director of the film, writes a ton of original music for this movie, because Shuki Levy is also a composer, probably most well known for doing the Power Rangers theme song and the theme song to the cartoon Masters of the Universe. So now let's just tie Gwildar back in here.
Alright, so let's clear up some confusion here, because this is going to keep irking me until we get this out.
Okay, let's do this.
So David Winning and Shuki Levy are credited as directors.
Yes.
That is not actually what happened.
Okay.
David Winning is the director of this film, but because of contractual obligations to the Power Rangers name, Shuki Levy was giving the co-directing credit on this film.
Okay, that would also explain why they're credited separately in the ending credits. So
yeah,
that makes sense.
Yeah, because of contractual obligations to the name and property, he was given the co-directing credits as opposed to just the executive producer credits, which he also receives in this film.
Yep. But executive producer is pretty much just if you own a company.
So, also the writing credits here is Shel Danielson and Shuki Levy. Wrote this based on characters by Haim Saban and Shuki Levy, but conveniently leave out the original Japanese writers for this show, which they just take the idea from directly.
Yeah.
So that's also another thing.
Just more great stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Levy writes these songs for this movie, and they are epically hilarious. If you're a fan of the original Power Rangers theme song, they have still kind of like that driving instrumentation where everything sounds technically wonderful. Great guitar work, great drum work, great bass work. It's honestly the original Power Rangers theme song is probably one of the best written theme songs. It's catchy, it's easy to remember, and the instrumentation is just phenomenal.
Go, go,
Yeah. Honestly, my favorite Power Ranger song is the Green Ranger's theme. The first time you see him when he's all evil as Reaver Pulse's kind of henchman, but nobody knows it yet, so if you want to go ahead and check that out, find out.
Yeah.
It's my ringtone for a while on my phone.
Yeah. So they get on the aforementioned Spanish galleon with their cars, which you never see how those cars get on that Spanish galleon. It just happens. They're like, we need to get the cars on the Spanish galleon. Next shot, you see they're pulling onto it.
Yeah, this galleon's like 50 feet, and their cars together make a robot that's like 1,000 feet tall. So
I guess you're supposed to assume, because later on you see the cars driving through the water. You're supposed to assume that happened, but this would have been the moment to show that.
Mm-hmm.
And then suddenly they're just getting off the Spanish galleon by driving through the water. I digress. The song that's playing as they're riding on this galleon is the funniest thing, to the point where I was audibly laughing. And I hope I can find the clip of it, because it is hilarious.
It's awful even by children's music standards.
Just, oh god, what is going on?
Also, if these cars are so big to create a Zord that's realistically like 7 or 8 stories tall when put together, how did this 12-year-old child get into this car without the use of a step stool?
Let's get back to this, because we have not discussed this at this point. One of the Rangers at the very beginning of the movie goes to do some kind of spinning jump kick.
This Ranger... Okay, so this Ranger is the current Blue Ranger, who was actually Rocky. The original Power Rangers, Jason is the Red Ranger. Him and Kimberly are written off the show. Amy Jo Johnson, who I believe is brilliant in a bunch of other things that you should watch.
Felicity.
So then Rocky becomes the new Red Ranger. By this point, in terms of Power Rangers lore, if you're keeping track of colors and stuff like that, he's been demoted to Blue. He wants to exit the show in real life to focus on his martial arts dojo that he legitimately owns. There's rumors that he's actually got injured at the end of Power Rangers Zeo. So at the beginning of the film, they write him out of this film by having him try a back jumping heel kick into a trainer that is holding up his hand with a pad on it. For roughly 2 or 3 seasons now, you've seen him as a Power Ranger defeat villains using his martial arts abilities. So when he jumps to hit this pad on a hand of a man that is crouching in what I will only assume is a standard-sized boxing ring.
Yep.
So roughly 20 by 20.
Yep.
He jumps so high that he misses this man's hand. Misses this man's head. And with such velocity that when he jumps, he misses all of that. Clears all of that. Jumps
Ropes and all.
over the top rope of this ring, which, in case you're wondering, average ring ropes are 5 feet 5 inches, the top rope from the base of the floor of the mat. Jumps over all of it and lands on his back outside of this ring. And is so grievously injured, so grievously injured, that he can no longer fulfill his duties as a Power Ranger.
He is stretchered out and taken to the hospital, where he is laid up for the rest of the film. And you know...
Oh, we forgot. All of this happens in front of a group of orphan children who are watching their hero, because these martial artists in the rings are their hero. And they're just like, oh my god! And like the Power Rangers, the female Power Rangers, because they're the caretakers of children, are like, stay here, we're gonna find out.
And let me mention that these female Power Rangers don't know any other songs except for Row, Row, Row Your Boat. I realize it's in the public domain, so you didn't have to pay for it, but they sing this thing ad nauseum on the bus on the way over there, and it pisses me off.
Then they wonder why the one child is like, do you not know the words? Like, I'm just thinking about myself, of course I know the words, I just don't want to sing these same 9 words over and over again.
Over and over. I'm telling you, it's like 7, 8 times that you have to hear these kids sing Row, Row, Row Your Boat. You don't know any other nursery rhymes? Come on, people. Get with it.
So, the one child that's with them, his name is Justin. He's played by Blake Foster. Sneaks into Rocky's intensive care unit room.
Because that's how badly he is injured from jumping over a top rope.
Right. That he's in the ICU. A child opens the door, addresses him, and he's still unconscious, and he slides under the bed.
Now this kid comes in and talks to him. And he doesn't hear him, doesn't wake up. But the moment his 4 friends come walking in, he is alert and awake, and how did you not hear this kid?
There's like a 10-second gap between this kid stopping, talking to him, hearing people coming, sliding onto the bed, and them walking in.
So anyway, as the rest of the Power Rangers are talking to the just crestfallen Blue Ranger, they get a call from Zordon, the big floating head, if you're familiar with Power Rangers, who is kind of the Professor X character to the Power Rangers, but he's just a floating head in a tube.
Man, I know so much about Power Rangers, holy shit. He's a floating head in a tube.
He's a floating head in a tube.
We'll go there.
Well,
For all intensive purposes.
We're going to try to keep this a little layman here.
Yeah.
So, anywho, he gives them a call. He's like, Rangers, get back here. We need your help.
Get back here. Willow's missing in Africa.
Yeah. Poor Warwick Davis. Zordon calls the Power Rangers back. He says, the Warwick Davis is missing. And the child sees them disappear in beams of light.
That's right.
And float off. And he gets out from under the bed, and Rocky looks at him. He's like, did you hear all that? He's like, yeah.
Also, let it be known, Rocky still doesn't know that he's under there, and the only reason he honestly finds out is because it's a children's show, and as he's getting out from underneath the bed, he bumps his head on the bed.
Or else Rocky would have probably gone back into his very convenient coma from earlier and never known.
Yeah.
So anyway, Power Rangers get dispatched. They get all their new cars. They're like, the blue one's going to stay behind for now. And for no reason whatsoever, this child, this 12, 13-year-old child, suddenly gets to be a Power Ranger. He just appears out of nowhere in the blue car, and he's a Power Ranger now.
Guys, I'm the new Blue Ranger. Isn't that cool or what?
Cannot drive. Alpha, who is pretty much the robot companion to the Power Rangers, has to apparently off-screen teach this child how to drive.
Alpha had to give me a crash course in driving. Good thing you don't need a license to drive a Zord.
Because robots know how to drive. Also, in case you're wondering, this is Alpha 5. 1 through 4 are never shown in the series.
Yeah. I always assumed that he was just Alpha 5 as a short circuit reference.
Okay, so you... nerd knowledge here.
Yay!
So the Alpha 5 that appears in this movie is voiced by the same guy as the previous Alpha 5, but the new body structure on this Alpha 5 actually shows up in the rest of the series.
Okay.
And is actually designated as Alpha 6. That's a thing you now know.
Yeah. Congratulations, YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So the point to this is that this kid is now a Power Ranger.
Yes.
He's, typical height for a 12-year-old child, while everyone else is supposed to be 16, 17. They're high schoolers about to graduate because they've all known each other, and at least Kimberly and the original Jason have finished high school, and that's why they're on mission trips around the world.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the problem is, this goes back to us saying that most of the fight footage is stolen from a Japanese TV show, where there was no plot line of this being a 12-year-old child. So at any point that you see them morph, you get their little cutscene morph things, and when this child morphs, they created a costume for him in his size. But then, as part of his cutscene, he gains about 1.5 to 2 feet in order to be like, oh yeah, when I morph, I guess I just turn kind of full size like the rest of you guys, in order to make sure that this Japanese footage now syncs up with this American storyline.
And because apparently none of this was taken from the Japanese show, this movie, because unless the Blue Ranger in this season of the Japanese show is just a complete and utter doofus, the kid's jumping around every time because he's just the most excited to be a Power Ranger.
Because he's 12 years old.
But
now suddenly he drives a car and fights monsters.
But also you see Jason David Frank without his helmet on, in costume, so you don't see that often on the show.
Yeah. We follow them to this deserted volcano island because that's where bad guys reside in superhero comic stuff.
Why not?
And the villain of this movie, who we have yet to name, is named Divatox. And this whole volcano thing goes completely opposite of her whole spiel, where she has an underwater submarine and piranha men instead of putties. But she's intended to marry Malagor, who apparently is some rock monster with the power to have claws for hand and Taser-face. I don't know why, but he has electric powers. Like, she touches him and gets tased by him.
This movie's a mess.
Of course, he ends up getting summoned, contrary to Power Rangers' best efforts after turning Kimberly and Jason evil for roughly 45 seconds. Plot device. Willow can just change them good whenever he wants, but wants them to fight out an entire scene before actively doing so.
Yeah, because that's productive.
Then Malagor gets outside of this altar where he's been summoned from, inexplicably turns to huge size so they can call upon their swords.
Yeah, I mean, at least in the original you get Rita making them grow, make my monster grow, all that nonsense.
Yeah, Lord Zed has his lightning bolt thing, and the Machine Empire had their cogs of power or whatever it was.
He just comes up out of a volcano and he's like, oh, good, now I'm outside. Time to get big.
So they call upon their Zords. You get the series, the cutscene where their Zords fuse together for the first time and form what is known as the Turbo Megazord. Then Malagor beats the piss out of them for way longer than was necessary. So they eventually summon a hubcap and a sword.
Yeah.
And then they reverse Michael Jackson's Moonwalker directly to him, stab him once.
And then he falls off a cliff and explodes.
Yep.
He falls off a cliff and explodes. I mean, like, full-fledged explosion. Michael Bay just...
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
This is... Notably, Power Rangers always has ridiculous... kind of visual effects, even in the original show. If they were punched or kicked, sparks would shoot off their chest. But this dude hits the... I don't even know if he hits the water, because you only see him topple off the cliff. You don't know what he hits. He could hit Alanis Morissette's Jagged Little Pills down there. I don't know. Either way, he explodes into... what can only be considered an Alabama 4th of July celebration.
Mm-hmm.
And then Power Ranger just like, hey, we're going to turn around and pose. And that's pretty much the end of the movie. They go back, they take the helmets off of Willow and everything like that. That's it.
Yeah, and then they have then they win a karate tournament. The male grown Power Rangers win a karate tournament, and inexplicably, Jason Austin St. John's character is part of this karate tournament, though he was traveling around the world just like the day before.
That's right.
And was kidnapped by Discount Evil Inn, and
That's right.
you know what? I'm not even going to do a recap. I'm just going to start it right here. By our standards, by our scale, this is getting a damn awful.
Yeah, so, you know, everything's really out of whack. It's just ridiculous editing. It's ridiculous pacing.
Oh, I didn't talk about cinematography. This is just an awful looking film, too. It is just a terrible looking film.
You get cameos to try to reel in Power Rangers fans that have kind of lapsed. And as much as Mary Baldwin graduate Jason Narvi tries to rein this film back in, he just can't do it with the amount of screen time that he's on. So, based on our scale, going damn awful too.
How did you like Turbo Power Rangers movie? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Did you think there should have been more Bulk and Skull? Even in this review? Leave a comment down below. Let us know.
Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And if you'd like to press that bell icon, it'll send notifications and let you know when we release a new video.
And as always, have a damn fine day.